All right, hello, welcome to another edition of Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 139 for March 22, 2024. Today we're going to talk about release 1.26 and anything else that you want to talk about. This is a weekly gathering we do every Friday, this same hour, and it's an opportunity to get together, talk about low code in general, plant and app in specific, anything you might be facing as you do your development efforts. So this is all skill levels welcome. We record all these, put them out on YouTube. So youtube.com/plantandapp will get you to all of those. Really hours and hours of great content out there. So do subscribe to that and you'll know when we post new episodes. We're going to run this agenda. It's step one and step two always happens. We say hello and we go around the campfire, and it's a little bit unscripted, but we might get into some of the other things beyond. We always do first call, but we might get into some of the other things. And then step three, after an hour or so, we go into our non-recorded session we call Afterglow, and that's where people on a call remind me to move the microphone close so that you can hear me. Sorry about that. Do engage with us, though. Jump in, show and tell, use the chat window, but do engage with us. We have very few guidelines, but we do like it if you mute when you're not speaking, and especially if you have noise behind you. You can submit questions and topics in advance. Just scan that QR code and you're good to go. Give you a nice Google form that will tell you that'll come right to my inbox. You can also, of course, use my super secret email address, dale.warner@plantandapp.com, and you can make any kind of comments that you want. A programming note, Patrick Anderson, who usually joins us, will not be with us for this episode of Low Code Campfire or the next one, but you can check the video and read where he went. With that, I'll say good morning, hello, good morning from Central Standard Time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy morning. Happy Friday.
Yes, thank you. So, as is our custom, we'll go right to first call. Anybody have something going on that needs the help of this collective brain trust?
I don't mind if I could pose kind of a question about just process, not necessarily technical thing, but we are redoing our registration form just to be clear, and also try to get people through to becoming a member in the association a little faster and a little smoother. And obviously you have to change, have to balance the front end user experience with what's technically possible, how much data do we really need to collect, and also, hey, if we collect their email address and it's wrong, or their address and it's wrong, and then we incur costs from mailings or just a high amount of spam and stuff like that, or just the requests if people can't get into their account because it was too short of a process. So basically, we were trying to balance all of that. And I was just kind of wondering if anybody else has gone through that process, if they've discovered anything that is a little gem of information. For example, instead of possibly requiring them to enter a verification code to go back to their email address, maybe somebody doesn't have, they're not like where they want to be putting their email address in. Maybe they're on a public computer or a computer at a drop zone or something that they don't want to log into their email right there. Instead of doing that, we're foregoing that and just having them enter their email address twice to verify that it is spelled correctly, and getting them password, and of course you enter it twice and it has to confirm. What are the advantages of maybe logging them in directly, or don't log them in and make them type it in again and save their password? So just trying to figure out the balance there, and if anybody has encountered that process, and maybe what you've figured out works better, because our process is pretty long right now. We're just trying to streamline. Which, by the way, I will just say, I love the features in the action form about the agreement links. That's really awesome. very quick to make them agree to terms and conditions. And I also really love the CAPTCHA that's very easy to implement, and very much love the confirmation of feature where you can create a second field and just select immediately, this is a confirmation of the password field, so that they have to match. Those are so awesome, by the way. Really love those.
Thank you. Anybody faced those challenges recently or have ideas on the subject? While you think about it, I'll just mention a couple of things, at least one thing that I've done recently. I have a site where a lot of volunteers need to sign in very quickly, 150 volunteers perhaps. And um, in my particular case, I didn't, it's not like, well, anyway, I took an approach of saying, foregoing passwords and email addresses altogether, that in order to log in, they log in with their cell phone number, and we send them a text. They immediately get a text back, and that's it. So they can't forget their password as long as they have their cell phone. They don't need a username. I mean, it was just a really express process. But it's a pretty unique scenario. I really don't need to know who they are um, or anything. It's just kind of a private link that we publish at a very short term, and we want to get them in and registered on their account. But being able to use a text to confirm is one way it would avoid, assuming that they have connectivity. Well, they already have connectivity because they're on your website, but um, these days everybody has text, and one thing that I was a little bit concerned when I set that up that way was age groups. I knew the 20-somethings would be very happy to do that, no big deal. But I'm also finding that most of the 70-somethings can wind their way through that and not have an issue. So it's just an idea.
Did you, that's cool. That's actually really cool. Did you have to use like an SMS service like the Twilio? I know there's a connector for that. Did you incorporate that?
Yes, in my case, it's a church setting, and there is a different service that this particular church had access to. So I used a server request, but I've done it with Twilio before as well. But either way, they deliver very quickly. It's amazing. Most of the phones pick up the fact that it's a code, and so immediately offer it as a one button click to when you're positioned on that field to input the code. Usually they can just one click, and it automatically just enters it and good to go. Um, uh, just brainstorming a little bit. Another approach that I've considered before is kind of a drip approach of saying, collecting the minimum amount of information to know that I can back up with them again, and then add in other points after you've gotten them registered and in, that you start to collect more. So that might help it to be anything that you could defer, moving off into a second phase of input.
Right. And like for preferences, what we did, because we like to know, hey, do you want to receive a paper, a digital membership card or paper membership card, mailed, all that kind of stuff. We set defaults for them. And then on the thanks page, I've put a few things on the thanks page. So after they've actually purchased in the shopping cart and it gets confirmation, just presenting it, optionally, they can update it right there, because if they just take the defaults, that's fine. So I'm doing some of that as well, because I definitely recognize that we sure ask a whole lot of questions. So I did kind of divide that up. I guess like I was having a little bit of pushback from about entering the email address twice to confirm that they spelled it correctly and stuff. What have people thought about that? Is that unnecessary? Is that a good idea?
Yeah, um, most places these days, I'm sorry, what do I know? The sites that I've been signing up with seem to be asking it once and not asking to confirm anymore. Um, but also most of those are sending out something that you have to go through the gate. You have to get your email in order
Right.
to get through. So um, yeah, if you have it's tough because if you don't confirm it in some way, um, you're I think you said it, you're stuck with a lot of labor hours trying to sort out what to do with that.
Right.
Did you give them the option of confirming or receiving that email? Yeah. Put it in twice if you don't, if you, or receive an email to confirm it.
Yeah, give them an or. We do actually
Charge.
send them, but once they register, we do send in the, hey, you created an account email. There is a link to a page where they can start that process if they want. But we're not really it's a very much soft sort of urge instead of you got to do this or you can't create an account, you know.
Yep. So this kind of it's that it sounds like a balance, right, between a little bit of human engineering and um, you want members and you don't want to tick them off, but there's stuff you got to know in order to help them. How to get in touch with them is one of the big ones.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys.
Absolutely. All right, someone else.
I've got a couple here, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Um, so when you have a list and you want to do a multi-select, right now, the way mine is working, and I don't know if I'm just doing it wrong, it's taking the action on the last item selected. So if she's, in this case, I'm selecting several users and, I'm going in and I'm filtering. So I'm looking up this last name, I'm checking them. I'm looking up this other last name, I'm checking them. So now I've got two in my button. So unless I clear that filter to show the whole list, the last one is the only one that gets submitted.
Right. Well, that's doesn't sound right. So but that's maybe I'm not understanding how you've implemented. Do you want to show it, or you want me to try and kind of mock it up here?
Let me just give me a second. What do you need to see? The
Well,
settings for the.
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what you're doing. That I mean, a field that's made for multi-select, you shouldn't be. It should give you access to all of them. So I'm wondering.
Yeah. Okay. Let me. Yeah, I'll share my screen. I happen to have it up. Hold on a sec. Um, Somebody else is sharing. All right. Okay, so this is the way this particular button is set up. Requires selections, shows the count, requires data. And then per item, It reads this thing called a relationship. It creates a new rating. And then when that's all done, it just, displays and refreshes and things like that.
So I have to tell you, this is really useful because I was imagining you were even on a form, so I didn't even understand you're on a listing. So
Oh, sorry.
you've got a listing. It lists out
Mhm.
a bunch of items, and you're checking off which ones you
Yep.
Want to do. So per item actions should operate on. You should. I mean, as it says, a list of actions that are executed for each selected button.
And
per item.
it works. This is the heart and soul of it, create new rating. So
Uh-huh.
this all works if the filter is cleared. So if I've got 5 people selected and I clear my filter before hitting the go button, it creates 5 new ratings, which is exactly what I want. However, if I have it filtered by the last name for the last person, Warner, and I've got 4 before you, you're the only one who gets added.
So your filtering is interfering with this. I get it. I get it. All right. Well, now I understand. Can you scroll up just a little bit more?
Mm-hmm.
So we have actions and actions per item actions.
So, and
I
I'm kind of noticing in this now. I don't know that this is the problem, but this relationship, this read really can happen once. I don't know if that's interfering. Maybe this is it. Maybe that this read should, because it's only once for the stack, because everybody falls in the same read category in this action. Maybe that's better to, maybe that's interfering. I don't know.
No, it shouldn't. You should be able to put any number of items there. I think, and if you you should be able to put any number of actions there. If you unfilter, does it do what you expect?
Yes.
So it's saying this is kind of a um, I think this is coming down to it's a feature of what the listing does. It operates on the visible checks, not all of the checks. I'm not sorry. Was somebody else going to jump in?
I was just going to confirm that was what Matt was saying, was that it was if he checks 5 records and then applies a filter, we're only running against the ones that are in the current filter. So if I'm making sure I understood the problem.
Yes, you are correct. But if I, just simply go in and X out the filter and still have 5 in that refreshed list, then all 5 get added.
So now that we understand the problem, do you mind if I take the share back and we can explore a little bit? I think
No, go ahead. Sure.
Sure. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to my handy dandy test system and we'll just illustrate this. I think we can probably illustrate it pretty quickly. So do a form. I can't believe I did that. It's getting worse. Clean that up later. Okay, here we go. We have a grid. We have a listing. And so we're going to configure it to do selection. So this is just a SQL select on the users table. It's one that I use all the time just to kind of save time at reproducing issues. We are going to have a button, and you've got this as a root button. Yes, so this is a and we're going to enable selection, and then we have our actions, and so we can do our different things. And so what we'll do as a per item is just do a post message and continue execution, and we're going to say I'm going to be lazy here. We'll just use first name as a thing that we're going to display, and we're going to display them for 10 seconds and make a nice long stack length so we can see all of them. We'll put them right in the middle of the screen. So having done that, we now should have checkboxes. And if we pick 2 people and run the selection, we should get those 2 first names appearing in the middle of the screen. So now, if we add some other people, but filter for new, we have 4 selected, but we only are seeing 2, and we only get those 2. If we don't filter and we run that, we get all 4. So we've illustrated that the button only runs on the ones that that are visible at the time that you run it. And I'm interested just to, I'm going to change my filtering to be, my page size to be 5, so that when I refresh, I'm going to pick some from one page and some from another page. We have 4 selected, no filtering in place, we get all 4. So it doesn't matter about paging, but it does matter about filtering. So we're verifying the feature that you just described. We're definitely getting the functionality that you're talking about. I'm wondering if there's a way around this with, this says that we can get IDs comma delimited, and I would assume this is all, I'm hoping this is all of them. So let's do another toast message, continue execution, and we'll take that and display it. And again, we'll keep it open for 10 seconds and put it right in the middle. And keep it stack. Hopefully that'll make it display. So we'll refresh, pick a few of these to start with. And so we see 19 and 20 showing up, and then the names. So this is happening at the first action. This is happening at the additional actions. So now let's say that we select everybody and select everybody on this page as well, and run that. I don't want to select everyone, too many. And then we're not filtering, so we get all of them. If we do filtering and do it again, see, this is still showing up all of your selected IDs.
Yep, that's interesting.
So there's a behavior difference, and I wish we explained it differently, but in the actions, this is going to give you the list of everybody who's selected. Per item actions, it's each selected, it says for each selected button. So one of the things I'm going to do as a result of this will be to improve this. So improving the per action items on the listing, the help text. So this is going to, the per item actions only work on the actions that are filtered, and that they don't have to be visible, but they do have to be in the current filtering. So you get a display difference. And then a little proof of concept here. I am going to export this and put a copy of it down here. And we'll do it again at the end, and this will be the final. We know the difference. So if we use the same selection, they're available before and after, but the per item action is only happening on those that are visible in the current filter.
So could I then use that ID list inside the each?
Well, yes. So if you wanted to be able to use this, and let's clean it up here. If we were to, I'm going to turn these things off. So I'm going to say false here and false here, just so we have these out of the way, and we'll show you how to use them. So we have these two things are not going to run. We're only doing this. So we are going to display this toast, and then what we'd need to do would be to make a list. And actually, I'm going to take an intermediate step. The JSON array is a little bit easier to work with. So let's see what's in the JSON array. But we'll make a list out of that. So if we test this, we can see it's just a list of IDs with no punctuation around it. So that's kind of annoying. So let's maybe take the easiest way to work with this. If I were doing this, I would go back to using IDs comma delimited, and we can say we can run a SQL query for so I'm just getting a list of things that so this is I'm running a SQL query. That's not what I intended. Let's try again.
Yeah, you wanted to create a list of users, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, this is where Patrick would usually stop me, and so we want to create a list from SQL. We're going to do it by the IDs. The list that we're creating is user list. So now we can do a for each on user list. And so we'll do that. And the action we're going to take is And I'm gonna cheat here. I'll take this same one from before, so we'll copy it and paste it here. Modify it. So we can
False,
say,
by the way.
thank you. See,
Yep.
you know how to do this. So we'll just throw a toast out there for all of them. It doesn't like the SQL, so let's try again.
In parentheses. Doesn't have to be. You have an extra parenthesis. Beginning, yep.
Yeah, so now this, and actually, let's do it this way. With no quotes. Let's see. You're probably right. That's probably the syntax that was. So we're getting new user 6. So now if we unfilter and pick a couple more, and then new user again, we're getting all of them. So it's different behavior depending on which one, and you can get there, but you just have to know what it's doing. So I'm going to say it's a feature that per item actions only show up on the unfiltered one, but it's a confusing feature because you would think, hey, I selected it, it should be done.
Right, right. Okay, so to net it out, then you don't use the per item actions in this context. You use an action, build a list using the IDs, comma delimited, then execute in my case, execute that create rating action per item in the list.
Yes, I think that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
And I suppose it opens up the possibility of doing something differently with the ones that are within the current filter. So you could, but that would be a more complex scenario. But that is the difference between the way those run, and that is my action item. I'm talking and saying action item so that I can look for that in the transcript and fix it to improve this per item actions description to make some sense. Cool. Great question. You said you had a couple of things.
Yes, I do. So in my case, there's an upload of, in this case, users from a spreadsheet, and the the relationship of the user to, in this case, the subject is different. So what I'm wondering, is it possible to create a custom spreadsheet based on the individual, in this case, a project? So, and it's maybe too obtuse to explain, but so in this context, Dale, I'm your subordinate, and I'm your direct report. And in another project, these other two folks might have a different relationship and a different name, but that's project specific, their name of the relationship. So, and again, this may be too obtuse, so I'll be quiet. But basically what I'd like to know, can I create a custom spreadsheet based on the parameters inside a given project in this case? So what I'd like to do is create, have my sheet one that says is a list of all my users, first, last, and so on. And then the next column is a drop down based on data that I've maybe hidden in a separate tab that is a standard Excel lookup. So to make sure that in project one, the name of the relationship is called subordinate. In project two, the name of that exact same relationship is called direct report. So I've got, is it possible for me to essentially create a custom spreadsheet with data from that project that would control my drop-down features?
So, I think I get it. The question is about creating the Excel, correct?
Correct.
So the create Excel from SQL query or Excel from list, either one, they're going to do it based on the contents of, let's say, the SQL query. So if you can SQL query to retrieve relationship name, the column is, I mean, that's what's going to get created in the Excel. If you can represent it in a SQL, you can get it out into Excel.
Okay, so can that be placed on a specific tab? What I'd like to do is basically put it on a specific, have a core spreadsheet that's got certain functionality, and then put that variable data that I've created from the Excel from a SQL query, let's say, on a separate tab that I know what the name is. Maybe I hide the tab and have attributes to the tab itself. I know it's a big ask.
So you're wanting more advanced manipulation of the Excel.
Yes, indeed.
So when we create Excel, we get to say where it goes, where you're going to store it. Yes, Ben has chimed in and said only Excel sheets, no customization. And I that was my recollection too, but I wanted to make sure. So there's very little manipulation that we get out of that. And you know, Mark is chiming in about making multiple Excel workbooks. You guys are just steps ahead of me. One possibility would be that if you created multiple outputs and then had a master sheet that referred to the subordinate sheets, you could bring them in. There might be in the Internet of Things a way, some service that merges contents from one sheet to another, so you might be able to call some other service with our server request, but no, we don't.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. No, and so you might find an answer here with tools like here's another one. So you might be able to use some of these techniques to put multiple spreadsheets from us and then join them up.
Here's another question and this is a general related question, then what if I were to, and this is probably a security nightmare, but I'm just going to throw it out there anyway, build an Excel query that reaches out to the database and grabs this in quote unquote real time.
Oh, yes, potentially. For example, there's a macro or functionality within Excel to be able to. I would imagine you could run an API. So if you could embed, if you could handle the security part of it, you could run an API to retrieve what you need and push it into the sheet. Absolutely.
I think Ben is clapping. I don't know. Yes, and Mark, you can. I've
David.
done.
Trying to get your attention.
Come in.
I didn't want to interrupt. Just for clarification, so you're talking about you have a core Excel worksheet workbook already designed, and you want to customize some of the data that is displayed, correct?
Yes, let me be more specific. The spreadsheet itself is extraordinarily simple. First name, last name, email. What I would like to do is have it hooked in somehow to the project to retrieve the project specific values, and then have another column that uses those values as a lookup, a drop-down lookup in Excel. So, your name is in there, Ben Santiardo, and I look over at the drop-down, it's empty. I click the drop-down and it says, you're my supervisor. And it knows that supervisor is valid because the Excel somehow has been populated with that value of one of the valid drop downs. It might be a supervisor, here, a customer, a this or a that. Does that make sense?
To a certain degree. I mean, the specifics of why using a drop down is, not understood, but that's because it's your own thing. But that being said, I believe I've done something very similar with regards to having a workbook and pulling out data directly from Plantain App on a live basis. So you cannot get Plantain App to design the workbook for you and then offer it as a download. That's not going to be possible. But what you can do is have an existing workbook. The workbook would have to be upgraded to what's known as a macro-enabled workbook, because it's the only way you're going to be able to do this. And then you can create VBA coded macros that will reach out to Plantain App to retrieve that information. And you can use that using the Plantain App APIs. So you can create an API that returns specific data based off of parameters you send out, have your macro workbook call that API, return the data, and then populate in whatever dropdowns you want the data that is returned. And then you can further, I mean, if it's based off of security, you could further it by, making the person enter in their, username, password, or something that identifies them or whatever, if you need to, add security to that. But I think that is at least the way that I would approach it to get what you're looking for.
So in the case of the standard Excel, they've got the queries and connections. I don't know if anybody's done this before, whether or not that I'd rather avoid, mostly because I don't know it, writing macros for Excel.
While Excel allows you to do things like SQL queries and pulling data remotely like that, generalistically speaking, you never, ever, ever, ever want to do that. because you are exposing your database to the public.
Yeah. Yeah.
You never want to do that. If you go through an API, you have full control, because if somehow, some way that API gets, compromised in some way, shape, or form, you can always disable the API. You can modify the API and then modify your workbook and give out a new version of the workbook or whatever. But if you expose your SQL database, its IP, as well as some sort of
Yeah.
credentials to log in, and you need to change that, that could be a much larger problem. And not to mention, once exposed, until you find it and fix it, they could have done significant damage.
Yeah. That was my thought and concern as well. So thank you for confirming. Okay.
I mean, if it's internal to your own network, like, if it's within your own business and the SQL server isn't, being exposed over the internet or whatever, and you trust your employees, that's one thing. But if you're saying that you're giving this to clients and they have to look things up and it's being accessed over the internet, yeah, you definitely don't want to expose your SQL in that manner.
Yeah, it is the latter. So yes, I would not want to do that.
Is there is this just kind of a business requirement that they need to be able to interact with whatever it is you're doing by Excel?
Yeah, basically they've got to load a lot of users, potentially, a couple of hundred, and each user, first, last, email, and the relationship in this case, that's a variable based on the project.
Yep.
So, ideally, I'd like to be able to construct the spreadsheet to get downloaded per project with those things all plugged in. Alternatively, some mechanism to go fetch from that project and grab the information, and it sounds like an API may be the best way to approach this.
Yep, I understand. You can't simply send. You're trying to create an import sheet to come into your project. So without just saying, hey, enter it into the website isn't friendly. They're going to have this information someplace that they're going to need to.
Yeah.
They'll reformulate it and do some work, and yep.
So in a large organization, what they'll do is they'll take this master spreadsheet, which again is very simple. They'll send it out to people and say, okay, fill in
your
all
stuff.
of your all your respondent information and their relationships. So I have no control over typos and whatnot that come in, but right now I've got it set up so that they're doing it reasonably quickly. I build a list, and that was kind of back to that multi-select question. So I've got a list of 50 people or 100 people, and I've got to pick out the 5 that are direct reports, for example. So in everyone that's in that list has a relationship, and then they also can have a relationship to multiple people. So Dale, you and I are peers. Mark is our supervisor, and Ben is a customer, for example.
Yep.
So, there's multiple relationships depending upon who you're talking to. So it's rather intricate in that sense. And the people that are using the spreadsheet are HR types. They're not, necessarily, I can't count on them to, be spreadsheet savvy, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
Good.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anyone else have something that they wanted to consider a first call? I know it's 9 minutes to the hour, but we can still do first call. So I'm going to fill a couple of minutes here while you're thinking about that. Low Code Cafe, right after this call, there's an announcement scheduled to go out that our next version, we're going to talk about it at our next Low Code Cafe. That's Wednesday. I wanted to, I'm gonna put this on the clipboard on the chat here. This is our core website. Down, if you haven't looked at it in a while, it's probably worth keeping up with what we're doing. But way down at the bottom, there is the join the community. So the link to get to the event we're in right now, Low Code Campfire is there, but Low Code Cafe is there too. And so if you were to click on that, it'll show you what we're up to next and give you opportunity to sign up for it. But we do recommend that you attend if you're watching this later and you want to. All the stuff again is out on our YouTube channel for playback. But anyway, next Low Code Cafe, we're going to start talking about the features that are there, and we may be talking about the what we hope to get accomplished in terms of a beta period. So when we might announce when beta will begin, but if not, we'll talk some about at least when we hope it will begin. So, and if you are not already part of the beta program and want to be, let us know, let me know. This was real useful, I thought, and I wanted to get to it. Again, we talk week by week about our local playbooks, and I want to cover this draft because I learned something new today when I was taking a look at this draft. The idea behind our Low Code playbook is this is for our internal development team to, these are the ways that the concepts that we should bring to bear when it's time to develop an application for a client. But there are some things in here that many of them would be useful to you. And we wanted to bring that up. So there's one that we're working on. We haven't completed. It's a draft. And it's just saying that if you're queryable entity property, so you're designing an entity within Blanton app, should be set to either sortable or filterable. And so the why is that databases use index, and that normally when somebody's setting up a database administrator would set up indexes on keys that are going to be used to search through that database. So Plant an App does it automatically. If you mark an entity, a property as either filterable or sortable, you get an index key as well. So this is information I didn't know. Behind, I get very comfortable in using Plant an App and creating entities, and for my own convenience, I say, well, this field, it's a yes/no field. People are going to want to look at this list and filter it by whether it's yes or whether it's no, or what version they're using, or whatever it is. And so filterable is a nice convenience feature. I want to add it into my listing. Well, that's great. But by doing that, I didn't realize it was automatically doing the database work of creating an index key. So it's a twofer there. When you're defining it, you're going to want to choose filterable or sortable so that you get an index key. And also then something to know is that if you do that, you are getting an index key. Don't just turn on filterable, sortable for everything just because you might want it someday. If it's a value like the quantity ordered, and you're never going to want to search for things based solely on how many they ordered, or you don't need to sort it in order by that, don't pick it, because then you're adding overhead on your database server. So use judiciously. It's going to improve your performance. So did everybody know this except me, or is this new information?
Well, I was actually unsure of it, so thank you. This is a good clarification.
Does anybody does anybody do any manual manipulation of SQL properties in relationship to entities?
I do go in and turn this on and off depending on the field. Usually it's something that's been off, and then I a long time down the road, I find out that I have a request for it. One of my, things that I run into is a grid. You can't go override it at a grid level. You can turn it, you can't turn it on at a grid level. If you turn off filterable or sortable at the entity level, when you go to a grid property, you can't turn it on for that. So I end up going back and turning it on for something, at the entity level.
Yes, and this that kind of gets into an interesting area because when you use a plant and app entity and it creates the related, in this case, a listing to display the information, it automatically propagates the choices that you make here onto the listing. So it turns on the filtering for that thing. And so it's doing two things. It's doing the database work to set up the index. It's doing the listing work to set up the listing. And you're right, if you go into the listing later on and try to manipulate it, it's not going to allow you. If you create a listing that's disconnected from the entity, for example, you're doing a SQL query against that table, but not using the entity, it would let you create a filterable or a sortable, and in that case, it's local only to the listing. It won't change the database. So there's little nuances that come into play. Oh yeah. So Mark living dangerously. I have edited a text field to have more characters. So changing the underlying properties of the database to go up from our, I think, default. For example, a default text field is 450 characters, I believe. And so probably an upward edit there. I recently did one. I added my own key. I'm working on a project where I have a numeric ID and a text field, and I needed that combination to be guaranteed unique, and I wanted to enforce it at the SQL level. So creating a unique key for SQL now SQL enforces that, which can have odd effects if you need to pay it. It's going to have some impact on the development. So, for example, our standard add change form, if you try to add a record that has a duplicate, it doesn't have a very nice error message. It says, gives a SQL error saying that violates a key. So you can do some things in the database that have impact on the way things are presented. So for good or bad, lots of power there. And then before we get away, Matt, I just wanted to point out, if you haven't seen it, Mark added some stuff to the chat about a Google search for how to combine some things, and talking about using JavaScript to combine two workbooks. I see you've got a thumbs up on there, so you do know about it. Good. All right. So we didn't get to, well, we got to exactly what we needed to, the things that you wanted to talk about today. There's more, and we'll roll some of this over into the next time. I will say that there's more. There's been another small contribution to Campfire website, and that might be of. I was hoping actually to try and run that, but we're doing some more health check kind of things to make sure that upgrades run and things like that. But if nothing else, the contribution that I added, and we'll cover it next week, it's interesting to me because it uses Razor, PowerShell, and JavaScript all in one thing to produce a nice report of what's going on local to your system. So interesting impact. In any case, we've hit our hour, and we thank you for sharing it with us and being part of this back and forth that is Low Code Campfire. If you have a minute and want to hang around, we're going to go into our Afterglow segment and go off the record. So enjoy, and see you next week.